I'm Marissa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very interesting, mind-bending theory for y'all. But before we get started, I will turn it over to my co-host, Ethan.
Follow us on all social media at Conspiracy Couple Podcast, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Do all that stuff. Like, subscribe, watch the video, comment, let us know what you want to see next or what you think about the theory. Rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. You know, you're an adult. You know what to do.
Okay, thank you for that, Ethan. We have an update to share with all of y'all.
Mm-hmm.
We have some brand new members of the Conspiracy Couple family. So, as you can see on the screen, if you are watching on YouTube, or if you are not watching on YouTube, we have adopted 2 kittens. Yes, so I thought you were going to say something. No, you just nodded. Okay, so we have 2 kittens. Their names are Kermit and Squish. And so we have 2 little baby boys that are joining the Conspiracy Bean, Nova. The Conspiracy Bean and the elder conspiracy cat now, Nova. So, all is well. If you want to, hop onto the YouTube, hop onto the Instagram, and we'll be posting some photos because they are so small and so cute. They're like this big, only 8 weeks old, and we are obsessed with them. So, thank you for all your well wishes with the new additions to our family. Anything you'd like to add? No? Okay, so this week on the podcast, we are going to be discussing a theory that really forces us to question reality. It forces us to question our world, what is real, what is fake, and everything that we think we know. It just really kind of brings that into question. So today we are going to be discussing the simulation theory. So Ethan, as always, have you heard anything about the simulation theory?
I have.
Okay.
Listeners of the podcast that have been listening for a while may know that I took a conspiracy theory class in college. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the theories we talked about. This was one of the theories that a lot of people in the class knew. Several of them seemed to believe it. To me, it always seemed far-fetched. But I'll give my opinion, I guess. We'll see if you can change my mind.
Okay.
But yes, I do know a little something about this theory.
Okay. And if you have any input to add, as we're kind of going through, it seems that you are a scholar of this theory and that you probably had one lecture about it.
I don't know if we had a lecture about it. I wouldn't necessarily say that conspiracy theory class had lectures.
It just kind of had discussion.
Maybe. I don't really remember it all that well. I didn't.
What a waste.
Pay that much attention.
What a waste. Anyways, so this theory really stretched my brain while I was researching it. One of the reasons is because it's kind of based in 2 different major camps. So the first one that it's really majorly based in is philosophy. And the question of what are we? Why are we? All of those big questions and reasoning and logic. Now, admittedly, philosophy was not a subject that I particularly cared for or one that I was really that good at. I was just I don't know. This is too much thinking. My brain hurts.
Too much thinking, too much being? Because you think, therefore you are.
I did not. I was this is too much. I don't know what it was.
I want to stop thinking. I want to stop
and here's the thing. I really love learning. I love learning. My mind is very active all the time. But for some reason, philosophy, I was just I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I don't know what it is about it. But to me, I was there's nothing to learn.
I feel
I already know how to think. I do it too much.
I feel like the closest thing to a philosophy class I ever took was the conspiracy theory class.
Oh, you didn't have to take Philosophy 101?
No.
Yeah, fun story. I was actually like embarrassingly late to my first day of philosophy 101 in community college because I was someone who was always on time to class because my dad drove me to school and he was always on time. So I show up to the class and I go to the room. I'm like, I've never been in this building before. I've been in this college. I'm like, okay. I see a group of people waiting outside the classroom. And I'm like, oh, okay. These people, like, the door is locked. They're waiting to get let in. So I know that in college there is a rule, an unofficial rule, that if your professor is 15 minutes late to class, you can leave. Okay, so we get to 5 minutes. Class is about to
I feel
start.
like that's like not real.
People usually leave after
People
about
say it.
5.
Everyone always says that. Like, oh, if the teacher's 15 minutes late, but I don't think that's actually real. I think people just made it up.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm waiting out there. I'm 15 minutes early. Okay, so class starts at 9.
I thought you said you were late.
No, we're good. Just wait. Class starts at 9. Okay, so I get there. I'm about 10-15 minutes early. I'm standing outside the room. Okay, the minutes tick by. The minutes tick by. The minutes tick by. And there's this more people congregating at this group outside the door. So then we get to 9 o'clock. Then we get to 9:05. And then we get to 9:10. I'm like, are y'all waiting for whatever the professor's name? And they said, no, we're waiting for this classroom right over here. That door's unlocked. I was like, are you kidding me? So I was waiting outside the classroom for like 20 minutes.
Were they the only one?
Yeah, no one else went in, and the whole time I was sitting there, I saw someone.
So everyone else got there early?
I don't know, but I saw one person walk in, and I was like, what is going on?
You saw someone walk in and you
this
didn't
is
go
when
in?
no, this is when I questioned.
Oh.
Because the person walked in late, so I saw them walk in, and I was like,
I'm
wait, are y'all waiting for this door? And they said no.
How many people were in that class?
I don't even remember.
Because, like, how did...
I think
everybody got there 20 minutes early?
I don't even remember. I just remember walking in and class has been started for 15 minutes. And I had been outside the room waiting.
Interesting.
I was so humiliated.
Is there another door?
No. It was for I think there was another one over here.
So everybody came...
I don't know, but I was so humiliated. I was so humiliated. Like, oh, are you Marissa? I was like, oh, I want to die. I almost dropped the class. And then I told my dad, he's like, you can't drop the class. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Okay, but that's my experience with philosophy. The other subject that this has to do a lot with is physics and like the laws of physics and a lot of theories. Now, when I was like researching and listening to videos and listening to people explain this, my brain would kind of glaze over a little bit. So I will do... Yes?
Hi, Nova.
Hi, Bean. Okay, thank you.
It kind of sounded like she said hello.
Yeah.
Hi, what's up? What's
What?
up, baby?
So I'll do my best to kind of keep it beginner-friendly terms because I am a beginner and I needed these for my own self.
So I will probably zone out even with the basics. So.
Okay, it's good to know. But this theory basically raises the question, what is reality? How do we know what reality is? How do we know that we are living in reality? Because this theory is kind of it proposes that all of the earth and everything in our universe, or everything that we can kind of perceive in our reality, is actually a simulation, possibly a computer simulation, and that we are living inside of this simulation and may or may not know it. So due to the simulation technology, right, the people living in the simulation are most of the time completely unaware that they are living in anything other than the real world. And just because we have the perception that we are living in the real world, that doesn't mean that we are, right? So we may perceive this is reality, but that doesn't mean that it is. All of the traits that we as humans have and all of the traits that we associate with life and with the real world and with human nature, all of those have been input by our simulation creators, such as this idea or perception that we have free will or choice, right? So everything that we think that we have as a human, everything we think we know, our thoughts, I think, therefore I am, okay, well, all of our thoughts have been input into us. And everything that we look at has been created around us, and our thoughts have all been created too. The simulation is overseen by some higher intelligence form. Now, whether that be aliens or some type of like God figure or just like a person who's intelligent enough to create this, they oversee our life. So basically, think of the concept of the movie The Matrix.
How many concept? Think of the
Think of the
entire
movie The Matrix, okay?
That's where this theory comes from.
No, it's not. That's not where the theory comes from. But how many of y'all have seen the movie The Matrix? We watched it in my philosophy class.
Yeah.
We did, and
it's a good day of philosophy class.
I am gonna be real. I was very, very confused the entire time.
What?
Yeah, and I think the problem is that I may have fallen asleep at the beginning, and then I kind of woke up. I was like, "What's going on?" And that is very rare because I have never, aside from that one instance, fallen asleep in a class ever in my life. I thought about it a couple times, and then I got scared of getting in trouble, so I didn't. I forced myself to wake up. But think about the movie The Matrix. Ethan, could you just give us like a brief rundown of the plot of the movie?
Okay, so, Keanu Reeves' main character, basically everybody's living in a simulated world, in a computer program, but they're like plugged into it, yada yada. Neo's the one that can save them all and defeat I forget what the bad guy thing is called. But basically everybody lives in a computer program and he saves the world.
And what about the choice they have to make, right?
Oh, the blue pill, red pill thing? Well, Neo's given a choice to either continue living in the simulation and not knowing any wiser, or to break free and help Morpheus and the other people take it down. Been a long time since I've seen it, so there's a lot of things that I don't remember.
Yeah.
But that's the gist of it.
Where the yada yada came in.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to go into like every detail because basically what it is that they're living in a simulation and then Neo and a few other people fight back to try and break everyone out of the simulation.
And they all wear leather jackets.
There is one character who decides, that was like a part of the rebellion, that decides I think he sells them out and then he's like, I'm just going to live in the simulation. It's also kind of like a Christ allegory film. So there's that aspect to it too. The movie.
Oh.
Like Neo is he's like the Messiah kind of a thing.
I didn't know that.
That's just it just is the character.
So they have to choose if they want to go into this new world.
Not everybody.
Or if they want to have this awareness.
Has that choice, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Ethan.
I need to watch that movie again.
We can watch that.
Okay.
So the origins of the theory, contrary to what Ethan said, they're not.
I'd say they're
not nature. They're not modern in nature, right? So
modern people, that comes from that.
So it's not. There have been kind of different elements of this that have been talked about throughout history, and then expanded upon more modern. So the idea that the world that we live in is all an illusion was discussed by ancient philosophers in a number of ancient civilizations, such as Zhuangzi, who discussed the butterfly dream.
Wasn't like the cave...
Allegory of the Cave.
Was that by...
Plato.
Okay.
And that's actually here on my list.
Okay, because we talked about that in the conspiracy theory class, I think.
Yes, the allegory of the cave, that there are these people who are living inside this cave, and they think that's reality because they haven't seen what's outside.
Well, isn't they're watching a projection or something?
Mm-hmm.
And so they think that that's what life is because they haven't stepped outside the cave.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's you only really know kind of what you have experienced.
Basically what that is saying is that reality is perspective.
Yeah, perspective. Yeah, exactly.
Because all our realities are different, and if you choose to live your reality a certain way, and in this situation, it's we could be living in a simulation, and we just don't recognize
because we recognize this as reality because it's our experience. Yes.
And then the idea of that is does that change the fact that it is reality or isn't reality? If your entire life is in a simulation, is it not real?
It's a really good question.
Who's to say?
Who's to say? But all of these kind of also point towards like the origins of the world, right?
Right.
So when we think about the origins of the world, if you're someone who believes in some kind of a creation, where some kind of a creator, whether that be God, created the world, then people say, okay, well, what was God doing before he created the world? Why did God choose to create the world? For those who believe in, the Big Bang or evolution, what was happening before the Big Bang? What else could have been created in that time before this happened? Right? So it kind of points to the question of like, okay, well, was there something else that happened before that we weren't privy to?
That's kind of like the same thing, like going back to the cave, that idea of like what happened before. Because, so in our perception, our reality, existence has always been there. All we know is existence. So non-existence is completely foreign to us. We can't understand, okay, what was before existence?
Right.
Was there a before existence?
Right.
Who knows?
Right. And so it's like, of course, if you think in the creation kind of bit, you think, okay, well, God is eternal. God is outside of time. So was he there for a long time by himself? Like, it's just kind of like, it makes you think.
Your idea of like, depending on the religion you follow, there's the idea that if you live a certain life or whatever, you get your own universe. And so like that would be like, but then when did it start, kind of a thing. It just all comes back to the start of things.
So
how did things begin?
In the simulation, right, all of the laws of the universe are written into the simulation or program. So we might think, okay, the laws of the universe were created, or were evolved, but maybe they were created, but they were input by a programmer. Consciousness itself is written into the simulation, where your Sims have this kind of illusion of consciousness, right? However, this more modern theory of simulation reality was proposed by a man named Nick Bostrom. And so he is a philosopher from Oxford University. So he wrote a book in 2003 called Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? And this is kind of like the hallmark simulation theory, like text. And so in this book, he discusses the premise and conclusion of his theory. And so there are some quotes that I have found from this book. And basically, let me find some, because these are really long quotes. So okay. I'm just going to start here. One thing that later generations might do with their super powerful computers is run detailed simulations of their forebears or of people like their forebears, so their ancestors. Because their computers would be so powerful, they could run a great many such simulations. Suppose that these simulated people are conscious, as they would be if the simulations were sufficiently fine-grained, and if a certain quite widely accepted position in the philosophy of mind is correct, then it could be the case that the vast majority of minds like ours do not belong to the original race, but rather to people simulated by the advanced descendants of the original race. So that quote is the premise of the theory, and the conclusion is, it is then possible to argue that, if this were the case, we would be rational to think that we are likely among the simulated minds rather than among the original biological ones. Therefore, if we don't think that we are currently living in a computer simulation, we are not entitled to believe that we will have descendants who will run lots of such simulations of their forebears. So, in that book, he also proposes what is called the trilemma, or a threefold argument, proving that we live in a simulation. So, the threefold simulation argument suggests that one of the three propositions are true. So I'll state the three propositions first, and then kind of go into that. Proposition 1. We destroy ourselves before we are able to create a simulation, or all technological civilizations go extinct before reaching technological maturity. Proposition 2. We are able to create a simulation, but choose not to create one that would be similar to our world. So the third one, we are definitely in a simulation. So we'll go back.
So you're saying that one of those three has to be true?
One of those three has to be true, yes. So the first one, we destroy ourselves before we are able to create a simulation. So he says that civilizations are never able to create ancestor simulations. So the question before they reach the height of that capability, before they get to that place, they will destroy themselves or they will go extinct. So what would be stopping these civilizations from reaching this level of technological maturity? And why would they go extinct prior to achieving this? So if we accept this proposition to be the true one, then it has a good and a bad implication. The good implication is that we are probably not living in a simulation and instead are living in what would be base reality. The bad proposition is that we are probably heading down the path of self-destruction as a society and as a civilization, because once you achieve that level of, you can't survive to achieve that level of technological advancement. You will go extinct prior to that. The second proposition, we are able to create a simulation, but choose not to create one. So the question here is, if they could, why wouldn't they? Right? So one suggestion is it's not possible to create simulations so similar to our world, that they can create a simulation, but it's not similar enough to our world that it would be passable. Another possibility is that they choose not to make these simulations for ethical reasons. So if this were the case, then it would have to stand to reason that all civilizations have to share these same ethical and moral principles. That every single, because if one society can do it, but they say, no, we're not going to, then another society probably could as well. And why would they? Therefore, we don't know that they would have the same exact morals as this other one, or we'd have to assume that someone created one somewhere down the line. And if we think about that, right, think about some things that maybe Western nations value, but other nations don't, right? Think about differences in values, differences in religion, differences in ethical codes and ethical principles. Do we think that it's possible that every single advanced civilization or civilization that could achieve this kind of a thing, that they would all be on the same page in this regard? Right? So it kind of makes us think, if they could, what are some reasons why they wouldn't? Do those stand up? So the final one, we are definitely in a simulation. So he believes that all of these possibilities could be equally likely to be true, but that if we reject the first two of the trilemma, we must accept the third of the trilemma, saying that we are in a simulation. And so first we kind of I also want to share like a definition of ancestral simulation, because we've heard that term. So that's the proposal that if a society is able to create simulations, they would first create a simulation to support their ancestors or early civilization for their society, who would then go on to create their own simulation, and then so on, and so on, and so on. And so I heard that described as like a Russian nesting doll, where you have all of these simulations inside of one another that have been built by the ancestors. And so we could be living in a number of...
Person A creates a simulation of person B, or, of light, or whatever. And then person B creates a simulation C, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, we just have all these offshoot simulations, right? Which lessens the probability that we are living in base reality with all of these offshoot simulations. So what is some of the evidence that we may live in a simulation?
Mandela effect.
Yes, yeah. So if we live in a simulation, then it would stand to reason that there would be occasional glitches in the simulation. Which is a big thing in the Matrix, Which is a big thing in the Matrix, yes. Because even the most advanced computer programs are subject to glitches. So, one of these, just like you said, Ethan, is the Mandela effect.
Which we did an entire episode on.
We did an entire episode on that. But I'll kind of just briefly dive into it. So, it's basically the phenomenon that happens when a large group of people share a memory that didn't actually happen. So, this was named after the memory that many people had of Nelson Mandela, who is a famous South African civil rights leader.
Wasn't he president?
So yes. So this is a shared memory that he died in prison.
But he didn't.
He did not die in prison. Okay? So I am one of those people who fall into that camp of I very strongly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison. I also very strongly remember his televised funeral procession after he died in prison, which never happened. But I, like many other people, have this very vivid memory of watching Nelson Mandela's funeral on the TV and watching his wife give a speech at his funeral on TV, which never happened, right?
Yeah.
And
so that one's the one that's like, I mean, when was that? Do you like that? So that didn't happen, but when supposedly was it?
Early 2000s.
So I think I was too young to have any memories or like know anything about what was going on around then. So I don't have that memory at all. So to me, Nelson Mandela never died. Well, is he dead now?
He is dead.
He's dead now.
Yes.
He didn't die then though.
He died much later.
That one is more like interesting because it's like this full on like event. Most of the like Mandela effect like things are like how things are spelled. And basically what it comes down to for a lot of them is the way you would think it's spelled, it's not spelled. But in our brains, you know, you hear something or, you know, you get used to saying something and you think, oh yeah, it's going to be spelled. Like the big one is like the Berenstain Bears. It's spelled Stain, not Steen. But everyone pronounces it Berenstain because why would you pronounce it Berenstain? That's not it's not like a name. So everyone's like, oh yeah, it's the Berenstain Bears. So it's spelled Steen, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not spelled the way you'd think it is. So a lot of them are like that, where I'm like, I don't buy a lot of them because it's just like a misspelling issue. But that one is kind of an interesting one because it's like, oh, well, a lot of people remember this like happening.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the Mandela effect, it's asserted that this is one of the ways that another reality or another simulation could have blended into ours, or there was a glitch that happened where we had this mistaken memory.
Right. Like it did happen.
The programmer then has to come in and correct that glitch, which leads to these strange memories that a good portion of people have, but are like...
But then you can't find any evidence
But you can't find any evidence of it.
Because either it didn't ever happen or
it was erased.
All evidence was erased.
Yes, yeah. Another kind of proof is the feeling of deja vu. The feeling of when you're standing somewhere or when you like just are in a space and you see something or you hear something or you smell something and you're like...
The feeling that you've experienced this before.
I've been here before, right? But then you can't remember where you had that experience, but your brain is like, no, I've been here before. So it's proposed that when we experience this feeling of deja vu, it means that some part of our simulated timeline has changed and branched off into a new one, and that the simulation is trying to correct its glitch by giving us new information, trying to get us back on track. Okay, this is where you were, and now we need to get you back on track with the simulation. And so our brain is like, I've been here before, but it's just the glitch. Like the simulation being like, okay, we got a correct course. We had a glitch. Right. Another is the Drake equation. So this proposes... The Drake and Josh equation.
Oh, I was thinking the rapper.
I was thinking Drake and Josh. I was thinking. So this proposes that mathematically there should be over 1 million technologically advanced civilizations in our galaxy because of how large the galaxy is. And the nearest one should be only a few hundred light years away. However, as far as we know, we are the only technologically advanced civilization in our galaxy. So supporters of this theory say that this points to the fact that our simulation is only focused on us. Hence, why we are the only intelligent life. because our simulation is just like, we don't have the technology to create galaxies. You're the only one here because that's all we can create. And so there should be more, but we can't make that many more and sustain that simulation. But if we were in base reality, there would be more advanced civilizations because of the Drake equation. So physicists and scientists have also seen in observations that many things in life and nature, such as DNA or electrons, can be broken down to basic math equations or computer code. So a lot of things can, if you break it down into like its basic particles, it's binary computer code. Skeptics say this is a coincidence and that humans by nature look for patterns in what we do. Computer code or, that kind of thing is easy. It's easy to make into a pattern. And our brain wants to store information based on patterns and what it already knows. However, proponents of this theory say that the reason we do that is because we are programmed to do that. We are programmed to put things in these mathematical equations. And we are programmed to look for and see these patterns all around us. A lot of other laws of physics, people say this points to the simulation. So the fact that the speed of light is limited. Some say this is very helpful in keeping the simulations in line and preventing them from finding the end of the simulation. Oh, the speed of light's limited, so you can't go past this, so you can't find the end of the simulation. Okay, great. And there are a lot of other concepts in physics that people point to. And if you're able to understand these types of concepts, I say go ahead and Google it. It's fascinating. I was reading it and kind of like my eyes are glazing over a little bit. But if you're someone who understands that kind of stuff, then it's really interesting. There's a lot of, great physics laws that kind of point to that theory. So what are the odds, right? What are the odds that we're in a base reality versus a simulated reality? So Elon Musk, famous...
The odds that we're in a simulation?
That we're in a base reality.
Oh.
So Elon Musk replied 1 in billions when he was asked. And another supporter of this theory, a man named Neil deGrasse Tyson, replied 50-50.
Well, one of those people has a background in physics.
Which one?
It's not Elon Musk.
Well, Elon Musk is quite an intelligent man.
Let's not talk about that on here.
Anyways, so the question is, right, do we have the technology currently to create a simulation so advanced? So one of the reasons that Elon Musk says we are probably not in base reality, he uses the example of like, okay, when I was a kid, look at video games when I was a kid. We had like 2 triangles and a circle and like a rectangle, right? We had Pac-Man, we had Pong, like we had these like little dinky video games. Look at the video games we have now. Like look at the advancements that have been made in the span of 40 years. Who is to say that if we had more years, more time, we couldn't create something that would be able to, advance like this? Apparently, right now, we do not have that technology. However, according to Moore's law, computer technology capabilities double about every 18 months. So this has recently slowed down simply because of physical limitations for future growth, not technological limitations. So the thing is, the creators of the simulation don't even have to simulate the entire universe all at once. Much like video games, all they need to simulate is what we are seeing and what is right in front of us at that moment in time. Something off in the distance would be created enough for us to see it, right? And the program knows exactly how much information to send us at one time. So like think of like if you're driving down the road and you see a mountain. You only see part of the mountain. As you get closer, you slowly start to see more. As you get closer, you slowly start to see more. It's kind of like that. We only need to get a small piece of information at a time to convince us that we're in reality. Also, think about how realistic AI technology and virtual reality is right now.
I wouldn't say AI is super realistic.
Well, let's just get into this, okay? So it's not perfect. right? It's not perfect. You can certainly like see sometimes that it's not the same. But think about like what we can see. It's scary. And to my opinion, the idea of AI and virtual reality scares me. Like, I do not like it. It's scary.
I don't think that virtual reality and AR are even close to the same thing.
They're not, but they're the same kind of concept.
Are they?
Okay, right. So AI is you're creating something that looks realistic. Virtual reality, you're creating a real world.
You're creating something was created that does makes creations.
So we have a simulation inside a simulation then.
Supposedly. But it doesn't actually.
And virtual reality, okay, you put on glasses.
But it only makes what you tell it to make. I don't think VR is similar at all.
All of it scares me, okay? Okay, so let's talk about deep fakes. They're not perfect, but we've seen some very realistic deep fakes, right?
We have?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we have.
We have seen some very realistic deep fakes where you can hear someone's voice and you can see someone talking and you're like, wow, I can't believe they said that. Because they didn't. They never said that. Okay?
You can always kind of tell, though.
What about AI-generated voices? Right? Like, there was one that I was laughing at. Ha ha ha. It's an AI-generated version of Kanye West singing Country Girl by Luke Bryan. Ha ha, that's so funny. But then I was like, that actually sounds like Kanye singing it.
But you can always hear
It makes me uneasy.
You can always hear the computerization of it, though. It never sounds actually natural. Somebody like Kanye would sound more natural because of like kind of how he has used auto-tune in the past.
Okay. Well, think about this.
So his voice kind of already sounded like that?
So think about this. There was this case of this Twitch streamer who had some other person make either deepfake or AI adult content, generated her as an image, put her in this adult content, and people thought that it was actually her. But because it technically wasn't her, she wasn't able to get it taken down.
Well, that's... Yeah.
Right? But they were able to create this, use this for a purpose that she did not consent to, use her likeness and image for a purpose she did not consent to. And it was so close to actually looking like her that people thought it was her. Right? So think about just like where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And then think about the fact that according to Moore's Law, it continues to just double in capacity, double in abilities.
I also think people who mess around a lot with AI and stuff haven't seen movies like The Matrix or Terminator enough.
Right. It's like
how do you see this kind of stuff and think this is a good idea?
It's like the same thing that I feel when I watch Jurassic Park. Right? It's the idea of like just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. Right? Just because we can technologically build these things and create these things, that doesn't mean that it's ethical.
I would be more on board for dinosaurs than for AI.
I would be on board for none of that. Okay?
I'm just saying I'd be more on board for dinosaurs than for AI.
Right? They're like, let's just like, how about this? Build something that can kill us and we can't control it. How does that sound? But we'll put it on an island and we'll charge people to come to the island.
Skynet.
So ridiculous, okay? Another question that came up for me and that I would like to think, like, have you guys input on. Okay. Are we in the simulation? Are we part of the simulation?
Isn't that the whole question?
No, let me finish.
Oh, okay.
If we are in the simulation, is it possible to get out of the simulation? How do we get out of the simulation if it's possible? What is our purpose in the simulation? Right? So can we get out? Why are we in the simulation? What is our purpose, right? If you're someone who thinks that life has a purpose and life has a meaning, what's our purpose? Are we just like characters, right? If I don't know if y'all have played Sims, okay? Are we just like the characters on Sims? And someone is looking at us and playing when they're bored, and we're doing stuff, and
you're like, I'm gonna go. They're like, I'm gonna go do this thing. You said, no, you're not. You're gonna go do this thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why when you walk into a room, you forgot why you went in there because your
Sim canceled the little
Sim
icon.
Creator is like, no, don't do that.
Right. I'm like, are we like the Sims? Like, okay, my Sims, I'll admit, I dabble in The Sims 4, okay? And by dabble, I mean I go through phases where I play it for a couple hours, a couple days in a row, and then I'm like, I'll come back to this in a couple years, okay? So
a couple months.
When I'm playing The Sims, my Sims, they don't really like have purpose. Like I'm like, okay, y'all, go like take care of your pets, Go do your little painting. Go do your little gardening. If one of my Sims dies, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it's just...
Right.
Right? Like, they do what I tell them to do, and I just want to be entertained. I want to be entertained. I want to not be stressed out. Is that how we are if we're in the simulation? What happens if our creators decide they no longer find the simulation or our part in the simulation interesting? Or what happens if we become too aware that we're in the simulation? Do they just remove us from the simulation? Like The Sims, do they put us in the pool and take out the ladders? Like, what happens in those situations?
That would be kind of wild.
Oh, well,
Although I can get out of a pool without a ladder.
not on The Sims you can't.
I know, I said I can.
So if we're living in a simulation, is it not in our best interest to then play along and attempt to complete whatever quest we have been assigned without causing too many problems, lest we be deleted from the simulation?
I'd like to be able to see little like indication markers of where my next quest is, so I can advance my story.
So you can advance your story. Oh
Like,
my
all right,
gosh.
where's the next story? Like, you're just looking around and you just see a little exclamation point. And like, okay, I gotta go that way.
Yeah.
Go to work again?
Right. And then you like
What is this quest over?
jump into your little uniform. And so then the last question I'm going to pose before I kind of conclude is, who created the simulation? Right. So some people suggest that it could be like a creator like God, or any other religious figure who has this like omniscient knowledge and can create something like this. Some people suppose that it could be members of our own civilization who are perhaps further along in their technology. This person could just be like any random person. Someone said this could just be a teenager in their room
Playing Sims.
playing The Sims, right? It could just be anyone. Or it could be some tech genius who has these like incredible knowledge that renders them almost as like godlike figure. So with all of those things itching at your brain, I'm gonna wind down.
Mm-hmm. You didn't bring up the idea of free will.
I did.
Well, yeah, but like, I guess, can you have free will and still be in a simulation?
We think we have free will.
Right.
We think we have free will, but we actually don't.
Okay, I guess. Okay, fair.
Right.
Fair.
So what do you think, Ethan? As we wind down, what do you think?
I will just say that my opinion has not changed from when I was in college. What I think is, who cares?
Who cares?
If we are in a simulation, this is our reality still. So why does it matter if I know whether we're in a simulation or not? Does that change anything? Because the idea of, you talked about, can you escape the simulation? You can only escape the simulation if you exist outside of the simulation. Like in the Matrix, they exist outside of the simulation, but their brains are put into the simulation, and they can go back in and out as they want.
But if we strictly exist in the simulation, there is nothing to escape to.
Exactly. How could you possibly escape? You have nothing. So, again, what does it matter? Who cares? This is our reality. It's still reality. Who cares if somebody else is making the decisions for us? Like, I can't change it. So why would it matter to me? Like, that's the thing. I mean, whether I have free will or not, I think I do. I think I can make my own choices. So why mess around and think, oh, I mean, here's the thing. Either it takes all the responsibility off you, like, well, I was told to do that, or you just, I guess, get resigned to the fact that you're not making any decisions. I don't know. To me, I think, why worry about that when I can just live the life I live? If it's a simulation, I get to the end and I was just a computer program, oh well. Does it change anything? Not really.
I guess my question is, okay, if you come at this from like a religious point of view, as I do, right?
Right.
Would we be in a simulation if we think, okay, God created the world,
Right.
and he's in control, but we live our own lives?
Right.
Would that be also a simulation?
No.
No?
I guess, because I think the thing that ultimately does differ is the idea of free will. And also a simulation of what? You can't be in a simulation, like...
If you're an
there
original...
has to be a base.
The
The idea of your simulation there has to be a reality, a real reality somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's that real reality? If you're coming at it from there are, I think, religions that would leave yourself open for that. But like if you're coming at it from like a Christian aspect of it, then it's not a simulation because this is the only reality,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, if I'm gonna say whether I think we're in a simulation or not, no, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because this is my reality, and again, I don't think it changes anything to question it. I don't think it changes anything if we are or if we aren't. So, I also don't think, so again, given the fact that I do just believe that this is reality, I don't believe we're in a simulation.
Yeah.
I don't think, so even if this is a simulation, this is, our entire existence is just a simulation, I don't think that makes it any less real.
That's a good point.
Because if this is a simulation and we live in a simulation and we are all simulated, it still is our existence. It still is our reality. So why does that change anything? Why does that make this any less real for us? Just because it's not real for whoever's running it, right? It still is real for us.
Yeah.
So who cares?
That's a good point.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that we currently live in a simulation. I wouldn't be surprised if just based off of where technology is going, people try to create something kind of like that. I think don't do that though, because it's unethical. I don't know. I just think that looking at where technology is now, that really does scare me, right? I think that everyone should be a little scared and a little wary of kind of the direction technology is going in, and maybe consider some of the ethical things that could arise from that. But I don't think that necessarily we're in like a base reality versus a simulation. I think we're just in like reality. And I think like those strange things that happen, they're really weird. But I just think like, I don't know, maybe it just shows that like we are humans, we are not perfect creatures, and we have like imperfect memories and imperfect abilities to rationalize and that kind of thing. But ultimately, I don't know. What do y'all think? Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think we live in a simulation? Do you think we live in a base reality? Do you think it's possible to create a simulation that advanced, that we would think it was our reality? And what are some of like the implications that you think could come from that? And let us know how cute and pretty cats are. We'll be back in about 2 weeks with another episode, so we will see you then.
Bye.
Bye.